Daisy.
And I'm Terry.
And this is the Monday Mindset Podcast,
where we share things of interest to us and hopefully to you.
So let's get started with episode number 242.
And this week, it's Daisy's turn. Daisy, what do you have for us?
Well, Terry, today I have more of a talking point. I'm not sharing something with you like we usually do. But I thought with this time of year, and there was something that I've been thinking about, and so I thought it would be a good thing to talk about and ask you for some of your wisdom about, because I know when I was making my notes, I was jotting down some things I could think of that you usually say on the subject. So I'm going to be sort of looking to you for the words of wisdom on this one. And you might have guessed by now what I'm going to be talking about. Have you guessed yet?
No.
Well, it's something you mentioned in last week's episode, actually, that neither of us really adhere to or like, or however you want to think about it. But the topic is New Year's resolutions. We are a little bit, by the time this episode comes out anyway, we're a little bit into the new year, but we're probably at that point where people who like New Year's resolutions have made them and have maybe started them or have maybe already fallen foul of them, or however you like to think about it. And I know people have all sorts of different alternatives. I saw a friend of mine had listed her New Year's intentions. I think she'd set her intentions was the kind of the alternative to New Year's resolutions. I suppose just a sort of slightly different way of looking at it. Still felt quite similar to me. But anyway, I was sort of thinking that there are pros and cons to this whole sort of starting again or starting anew, starting afresh concept that I think New Year's resolution sort of falls under. And I think motivation can be really high when we sort of look at it this way and can bulldoze through that inertia. As long as you can turn that into a plan for staying consistent, I don't think, personally anyway, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. But too often that runs out and we end up punishing ourselves. And food and exercise, of course, are the main ones. I mean, who out there hasn't started a new diet in the new year or signed up for that annual gym membership? You know, there are often good deals to be had, aren't there? And it did make me think of, I thought, I'm sure there's a statistic somewhere for the number of people who sign up for a gym membership in the new year and end up stopping going by such and such a time. So I did a quick Google on that because I thought it might be fun to have a look at. This is only one website, of course. It's healthandfitness.org, and it seems to be USA based. But their statistic was that nearly 11% of all health club memberships join in January, which already there I was quite surprised. I would have thought it would be higher than 11%. And maybe it is elsewhere, I don't know. But so nearly 11% of all the health club memberships start in January. But 80% of those are abandoned by February. Oh, wow, yes, that's quite high. The sort of statistic I had in my mind that, that people end up using maybe 3 months of that annual membership. But, you see the gist there. You sign up and, of course, you're committed for the whole year. You've got to pay that membership for the whole year. But a lot of people only end up using it for a few months. Another thing I found while I was Googling, and I did think this was quite interesting in a good way, and this comes from a website called glowfox.com, and they say that amid the pandemic, consumer habits evolved at pace, and they're talking about gym type memberships and people who go to the gym here. There is now a greater emphasis on health and well-being. In general, people are investing in various wellness apps, fitness technology, and online fitness services to support their physical and mental health through lockdowns. Over the last few years, with the rise of boutique fitness, not entirely sure what that is, many studios have completely transformed the way we think about the traditional gym. The boutique fitness movement is backed by a generation of members who take a big interest in their health and fitness. Gen Z and millennials are a group of consumers who are willing to pay a premium price for health-related services. They want connectivity, community, and an innovative approach to wellness. But I quite like that because a lot of us who are a bit older, Jim has always had that sort of, more of a, well, I suppose not just, but those of us who it's wrapped up with move more, eat less, that whole a little bit punishing, a little bit all about fitness. But I like this really embracing much more, looking at physical and mental well-being. So I thought that was quite nice that it was just sort of overall changing. But it's not just the new year, of course. It could be the new week, a new month, a new day even. How many of us have said, oh yes, I'll start my new diet on Monday. But not necessarily just diet or fitness. It could be a new job, a new school, a new home. But it's that tendency, I think, to throw our hands in the air. This is the downside of it, and give up until the new whatever it is. And also put a bit too much weight behind the new whatever it is. So, for example, how many people will I certainly have, put too much emphasis on everything will be all right when, or all these current problems or things that I'm struggling with will be so much better when I move and I can sort of start again, or everything about my life will be okay when I just lose the weight. Whatever, you get the idea, and often it isn't. So it's a bit of a seductive principle, I think, that golden time in the future where everything will magically work out. This is definitely something that over and over again, really, I succumb to. So I thought maybe we could just talk around this topic a bit and some ideas about how to avoid or maybe harness the tendency. Where I said at the beginning, this whole New Year's resolution thing could work well if it's not the opposite swing of the pendulum. It's not held up as an I'll sort it all out then, but that fired up initial motivation that always wanes. But why not use it? But then you just need to have that safety net in place to catch you for when it wears out. Because I think most of us have had that. And you talk a lot about motivation and how that wears off. You can't rely on it. When you most need to rely on it, it's usually not there. But a lot of us will feel that and be fired up by it and will be able to use it for a period of time. Quite often, that's why so many diets are these. I don't think they happen quite so much anymore, but again, showing my age here, but going back to the whatever diet, they're usually 2 weeks, aren't they? A week or a 2 week, and they'll give you a diet plan. And you can lose X number of pounds in this magical 2-week diet, because they know that most people can sort of grit their teeth and white knuckle it through a couple of weeks. But so many of us have done that. I do think, although there is a lot of there is a big negative side to that, I think there's a real positive to it as well. If we can set up this parachute, this safety net that will catch us when it inevitably wears off. And the other thing that I've made a note of here that I can remember is something that you talk about a lot is the pendulum swinging too far the other way to compensate. And then having things like holding patterns, consistency, setting yourself a baseline, a default position. So I thought there's all sorts of things we could talk about there. So to not necessarily see New Year's resolutions in a completely negative light, but with a big old caveat to it. But maybe they could be harnessed to really fire us up for something. And not just New Year's resolutions, but that new start, whatever it is.
So I think 3 of the things that I was thinking as you were describing it that are reasons we are attracted to New Year's resolutions and why we maybe lean on them unsuccessfully is because for some of us who are procrastinators, they provide a deadline. Well, I haven't done that this year, but starting January 1st, I have to do it. Or even like you said, I'll start that on Monday. Well, I'm not going to do it right now, but I have to do it, start Monday. So some of us feel the need to impose deadlines on ourselves, or we won't ever do it. Now, obviously, we can already see that there are problems with that, but I think that's one of the reasons we like using things like that is we see them as a way to give ourselves deadlines. On the flip side of that, for many of us, there's also a postponement factor. I know I want to do this. I know it'll be good for me, but I don't really want to do it right now. So I'm going to postpone it until January 1st. And it's probably no mistake that I'm going to postpone it in the US, it's during October, November, December, where there are these very food-focused holidays happening. And obviously other parts of the world have some in December and early January and things. So deadlines, postponement, and then the other that you highlighted is magical thinking. I really want this to be good for me. So we attribute the potential that it's just going to somehow be very different in that new year. I will be different, the goal will be different, and my ability to follow through will be different. Like we've been handed a magic wand. And then, of course, why don't those things carry us through? I think one is that they often encourage us to take on too much too soon.
Yeah.
We think having a blank slate will offer us this free space to do this thing. But in essence, it's making us take a pretty big leap. If I've gone from no exercise to I'm going to go do this class 5 times a week for an hour and a half, too much too soon. It's overwhelming. It's daunting. So I think, and maybe I'm doing these out of order and how this would help, but I'll forget, is that we need to work on combating that. That when I start something new, whether it's on Monday or January 1st or when I get that new job or whatever, that we set realistic expectations.
Yeah, because you could still actually set yourself a New Year's resolution, but instead, like you say, the tendency is to make it something big.
Yep.
Hence signing up to the gym membership, and I'm suddenly going to go 3 days a week, 4 days a week, whatever, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this massive workout and everything's going to be amazing.
And it will be magical.
Yeah.
And it will quickly lead to all of the things I want, which it won't quickly lead to that. It is going to take time and lots of effort. And as humans, we struggle with that usually.
Yeah.
We want immediate results. We want immediate feedback that what we're investing our money, our time, our energy into is paying off.
Yeah. What if you actually just set yourself a goal of, whatever it is, whatever is achievable for you. And this is where it's so subjective and so relative, isn't it, to the individual. But it could be just doing more than I'm doing now is too vague. But what if you said, I'm going to do an hour more than I do now a week? Whatever it is. I'm going to spend an hour walking on top of what I do every week. Whatever it is. Or I'm going to do the Rangan Chatterjee 5-minute workout routine every morning while I'm boiling the kettle. Whatever it is. But something that for you is achievable, that actually you could set yourself a New Year's resolution that you might actually be able to do consistently. But work out what it is for you that's consistent. You could actually give yourself a tick at the end of the year.
Yeah. And I think, Daisy, what you're highlighting right now is a really significant part of focusing that plan, that goal, that resolution on process versus outcome. Like people will say, well, this is the year I'm going to lose 110 pounds. So it's all outcome focused. I remember back in the day, one of my friends, her New Year's resolution almost always would be, and of course, some years it created a rhyme, so it was great. The goal is, I'm going to become debt-free in 93. Okay, that's great. How? It's the process that we need to focus on. But we're often taught when it comes to goal setting and figuring out our plans to focus so much on what outcome is it that you want versus, like you said, if I'm focused on, I'm going to exercise or move at least an hour more than what my norm has been. That's not an outcome measure. That's a process measure. That's what will I be doing to move toward what I want. And then this, of course, brings up something that you and I have talked about in other episodes and something that I talk a lot about in my other work at TFM. And that is really focusing on your why. Why do you want to do this? Why is it important for you to be debt-free in 93? What will it bring you? So again, thinking about motivation, having this pie in the sky thing that sounds really attractive doesn't usually hold much power to it. We really need to know, why is it that I want to move more this year? Why is it that I want to work on my finances to put myself in a better position moving forward? How is being in the current place I'm in holding me back?
Yeah, and that's what I really liked about that thing I read out about the different way people are starting to look at gym and, well, not just gyms, but fitness apps or whatever it is, fitness type behavior. Their why, their motivation for doing it is a physical and mental well-being. Now, if your New Year's resolution for moving more, let's say, so that could be anything. It might be signing up to the gym if that's what you've decided that you want to do and that's what you fancy doing and you think you might enjoy. If your motivation for doing it is improving your physical and mental well-being, and that's how you're measuring it, you can check in and reassess that on, say, a monthly, a weekly, whatever it is basis, and say, well, do I feel better physically and mentally doing what I've decided to do? Yes, great, let's carry on and maybe adjust that. Let's fine tune it a little bit more, those markers, those measures. Or actually, no, it's not really hitting the spot. I thought the gym would do it, but it's not. But what I've learned about doing that is that I really like the rowing machine. And hey, I live near a river. Maybe I could go out and join a rowing club. It's a slightly random example there, but you get my point. Different kind of markers. And it is kind of looking at the outcomes, but it's certainly tied very much into the process and a sort of an awareness and a mindfulness about what you're doing rather than just some arbitrary goal that feels quite specific and feels very personal to you, but actually it's really arbitrary, like whatever it is, losing 100 pounds or getting fit or.
Yeah, and I think in that, it's really important, as you talked about it, it's about recalibrating what I'm doing. Oh, so I had this goal that I would do this. I'm not really feeling the benefit of that. So do I just scrap it and say, well, let's wait until next year and I'll figure out a new one to approach? Or do you say, okay, this isn't, moving me toward that thing that I've been wanting to experience more or improve in my health or whatever, can I tweak this? Like you said, if I love the rowing machine, but I hate going to the gym, well, what if I do explore and find a rowing team? And maybe that really does make that goal that I originally set out much more achievable because now the path that I'm using to get there is congruent with my schedule, my values, or whatever. So it can help us recalibrate. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes when we think of like a New Year's resolution or something, we don't allow ourselves to recalibrate. Nope, this is what I said I was going to do. It didn't work, so I'm done. Or nope, I'm miserable doing it, but it's what I said I'm going to do, so I'm going to keep doing it. Versus allowing ourselves to keep recalibrating throughout the year, realigning with it. The other thing that I think some of us fall into is thinking that by saying it, I will do it.
Yeah, definitely done that.
It reminds me a little bit of, if I buy it, I will use it. So of course,
done that too.
How many treadmills exercise equipment, things. How many pairs of running shoes have I bought with that in mind? If I buy these $125 running shoes, certainly I will start running more.
Like if I'd set the goal as buying an exercise bike to be a not very good piece of equipment for hanging stuff off. Yeah, achieve that goal.
Yeah. I have made clothes racks out of almost any type of exercise equipment. I became pretty expert at that. So I think, again, one of the things we have to do, it doesn't mean setting the goal or setting the resolution is a waste, but we can't just say it. If I say I'm going to become debt-free in 93, I need an action plan. What will I do differently? What structures will I set up for myself? How will I actually achieve that? I know we've talked about manifesting, and I believe in manifesting, but I can't just say, I'm going to become debt-free this year and then keep doing all of the same things I normally do. I have to change my approach. And so I think being more actively engaged in, again, not just the, I want this outcome, but there are steps I can take. There are structures I need to put into place to help me with this. So maybe to achieve one of my goals, I need to stop spending as much time scrolling through social media. But that might not sound like directly related. Like, oh, I want better physical fitness. Oh, well, that means that 45 minutes every morning that I scroll, I'm going to use that differently. I'm going to do some meditation. I'm going to do some stretching or whatever physical activity I'm going to get started.
Yeah, that goes back to your episode of morning routines. You could actually achieve in 5 minutes every morning, not spent scrolling on social media. You could achieve a New Year's resolution.
That's right. And I think for many of us, the reality that we find, but it's not how we think of it from the get-go, is small changes can help me build into larger changes. We think we have to do something drastic. I have to clean the whole house of this so that this year is different. But without those structures in place, if I don't change my morning routine, I'm going to keep doing the same things I've always done in the morning. And so really using whether it's a New Year's resolution or when I start this new job, build in, how do I want it to feel different? What steps will I take to actually make it different? And start with smaller things that are more attainable first. When I was a therapist, I remember I would often have conversations with people who wanted to exercise more. Very common theme. And so, of course, they would set their goal of, well, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour and a half, 4 times a week. And I knew based on their lifestyle and all of the things going on that was just pretty impractical. There was almost no way that was going to work. I said, what if instead you set up a plan to walk for 10 minutes? And they looked at me like I was crazy, like 10 minutes, Terry, that's not going to do anything. That's not going to help me get where I want to go. 10 minutes of walking is a lot better than an hour and a half of not going to the gym. So starting in small increments.
Yeah, exactly. I just did a quick calculation. If you were to spend 5 minutes every day doing something that involved moving more, and you did that for 300 days in the following year, so that gives you 65 days off, that would add up to 25 hours. Now, going back to that gym membership statistic, if you were going for, say, 3 hours a week, but only lasted for January, you can see how that doesn't add up. Well, that's 12. That's half of that. So, you might achieve a whole lot more from just a few minutes every day that you do consistently for the whole year than some big scheme. But I think the other thing is that you talk about a lot with being consistent about something, and you just mentioned about, making a plan, making a really practical plan, but making a practical plan for the time that's going to come when things get hard because they're boring, or they're hard because it's just hard doing this new thing that you're doing, or when that motivation runs out. You might be all fired up now, and you get started when you're all fired up and you've got the motivation and you feel great because, you spend the first week doing exactly what you planned to do and you feel great doing it. And even the next week you do. But then maybe, the week after that, it all starts sliding a bit and you start feeling a bit rubbish, and you didn't make a plan because you felt really good when you made the initial plan and everything was going great. But where's my safety net? I haven't planned for that. And before you know it, everything's gone a bit wrong and you've thrown your hands in the air. And yeah. So I think sort of having a plan for the inevitable time when that wears off, or things get a bit boring, or whatever it is. What am I going to do when I hit that point?
I also think for many of us, this may be my last big push on what might help us, is having some type of support. Now, this looks different. Some people, it's, you join a group where you're all checking in. Other people, it's, I'm going to share it with one person. For others, it's something else. But having some form of accountability for many of us can really make a difference. Because for me, working out is a great example. If it's like, well, I'll just work out. Yep, I'm not going to. My brain has 14,000 reasons why not to. But if I need to reach out to someone and say, here's what I did today, that's one more reason for me to do it that I can't wiggle out of so easily. So finding support, finding someone or some kind of mechanism to kind of keep tabs that you are doing what you have set out to do. Don't wait until the end of the year and say, well, I didn't really do that this year. Okay, well, what will I do next year? On February 18th, know, how are you doing with it? April 6th, how are you doing with it? Keep tabs in some way to hold yourself to it so that it's not just a lofty concept that you're going to do. It's an actual making it happen process.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, that you've tapped into there is other people, and the sociable aspect of it, the connection aspect of it. Again, going back to that website that I quoted at the beginning, one of the things that they listed was connectivity, community, So, of course, the people who you work for, the fasting method, that's the big thing, isn't it? That's the crux. It's the community. So you have people who can help when it's difficult. You have that support system. You have the accountability, and the same there. But the example that I used earlier about going to the gym and finding that you quite like the rowing machine, but it's difficult to make yourself go, or those times when you don't really feel up to it, or you just don't fancy it for whatever reason, or there's something on the TV that you want to watch, and so you can't really drag yourself there. But if you were if you'd signed up to a rowing club, for example, as I said, or even just a friend that you went to the gym with, and so you weren't actually on a river rowing, but you were just rowing with a friend, there's the fun aspect, there's the community aspect. So you're not just going there for the exercise, you're going there to connect with other people, you're going there because it's a bit of fun. With the rowing club example, you probably go and then you probably all sit around and have a drink afterwards and a chat. It's more than just that original goal you had. It's the support system. It's another reason for going, and ideally it's a fun reason for going. It's something that you enjoy. So if you don't really enjoy the original motivational goal that you had for going, in this example, the exercise, the improved fitness, but they're the other things. So if you go that week and that part of it you don't enjoy, but you get a lot out of the connection, the sociable aspect, the fact that it's fun, even though you're feeling a bit off and the physical part is really not enjoyable, you're getting all these other things from it that will keep you going. week after week or month after month or, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
So if you can tack on some other reasons and some other things that benefit you, especially if it's improving the mental aspect, the mental well-being, will help and get through those times when it does feel too much of a struggle, or it's boring, or it's, I've been doing this and it's a drudgery,
Mm-hmm. I think it's also true with, there's become a trend in the past few years that people more set their New Year's intention. They choose, we've talked about this before, you choose a word that's going to represent your focus. How will you know if you're following through on that focus? Are you going to journal about it every morning and remind yourself of that focus? Are you going to highlight through the day when you do things that are congruent with that focus? But again, January 1st to say my, intention for this year, my word for this year is integrity. Just saying it doesn't mean anything until you start creating a system where you say, I feel so good about that choice that I just made. That was a great example of my integrity. Oh, I don't like the way I handled that. I didn't feel like I was really being true to myself and to others. So I want to keep working on how I do that. We've got to be reflecting on even our intentions. We can't just set them and expect that it's going to change our year.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I knew I could rely on you to bring plenty of wisdom to this topic. But I think there is some magic in a fresh start, a new start, something different. I think there is some magic in that, and some free energy, something that we can grasp to give us that motivation. I think there is something there. There's that little nugget that is really positive, but it's how to make that work in a real practical way that we can actually harness and keep going with to achieve that consistency that you talk about so often as being, one of the most important things we can bring to any new venture or fresh start, whatever it is.
Just to add to that, to wrap up my portion of this today, I think that's really important too, to think about. A lot of times we are choosing something that we have struggled with before. And if we go into it expecting the same thing that's happened before will happen
Let's
again.
make the same resolution and expect it to magically be different this time.
And do the same steps. And so it's that idea of we have to look at it differently. And, let's say, for example, it is weight loss. That's such a common theme in these. I've done a diet approach 463 times in the past 12 years. I've got to think about it differently. I've got to approach it differently, or I will get the same results. So going into a New Year's resolution as something different and new that you have to see differently.
Yeah, and that's also a really great reframe of all the past fails, quote unquote, isn't it? To say, okay, so how am I going to make it work this time? Those, yes, okay, I suppose in real practical terms, failures, but they're not really. They're something that can help me actually make an achievable plan this time.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, well, let's start as we mean to go on. Until we're back next time, I hope you and everyone at home has a very wonderful week.
Take good care, everybody.